Any subject of study should have an applied aspect so as to benefit the society and so should not be purely academic. Since weather and climate of a particular place is a major determinant in shaping our activities and lifestyle, climatology as a subject matter has immense practical utility, and there is a need to study the applied aspects of climatology with greater sincerity. In simple words, we can define applied climatology as the study of the effects of climate on natural and societal systems. Let us also examine a few definitions given by some leading scholars. According to H. Landsberg and W. C. Jacobs, applied climatology is scientific analysis of climatic data in the light of useful applications for an operational purpose. As per K. Smith, applied climatology may be defined as the use of achieved and real-time climatic information to solve a variety of social, economic, and environmental problems for clients and managers in fields such as agriculture, industry, and energy. Another definition was given by G. A. Marotos, who defined applied climatology as the scientific use of climatic data and theoretical constructs for the solution of the particular problems. Our natural system comprises of all the 5 spheres, that is the lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere, biosphere, and cryosphere. There is a continuous interaction between these spheres, and the climate plays a major role in affecting different processes that occur within these systems. Processes in the atmosphere inherently affect other spheres. First of all, let us study the impact of climate on the lithosphere. Lithosphere. You should be knowing that lithosphere comprises of rigid outermost crust and the upper portion of the mantle of the earth. Various geomorphological processes take place in the lithosphere, and climate happens to be a major driving factor that has direct impact on these processes. Exogenetic processes include the denudational processes of weathering and erosion, which basically originate due to the climatic factors. These days, the field of climatic geomorphology is an emerging field, and researchers study how temperature and moisture affect the rate of weathering, soil formation, subsurface freeze and thaw, etc. It was started as a distinct branch of geomorphology in the 20th century in France and Germany. Elements of the climate like temperature, humidity, wind circulation, etc. affect various erosional processes like fluvial, aeolian, marine, groundwater, glacial, periglacial, etc. It is also a well-known fact that spatial variation in the climatic parameters like temperature, humidity, precipitation, etc. lead to variation in the landforms in different climatic regions. For example, a region with high mean annual temperature and humidity favors deep chemical weathering, and the steep slopes in these regions would have the presence of gullies. Also, high temperature and humidity favors dense vegetation on such slopes. So, soil erosion, sheet wash and other erosional activities are reduced to a great extent in the slopes having dense vegetation. Contrary to this, the slopes which have been cleared of natural vegetation would experience active erosion. Atmosphere. Atmosphere is a gaseous envelope surrounding the earth and contains several gases as well as minute suspended solid and liquid particles, or the aerosols. These are held by the earth's force of gravity and support life. Nitrogen and oxygen are 2 major constituent gases that make up about 99% of the dry air in lower atmosphere. The remaining 1% is constituted by argon, carbon dioxide, helium, methane, hydrogen, nitrous oxide, ozone, etc. Out of this 1% gas, few are greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, water vapor, etc. Due to human activities like burning of the fossil fuels, gases emanating from the industries, etc., the percentage of greenhouse gases has increased. This in turn increases the temperature of the atmosphere, as these gases are transparent to the incoming solar radiation but traps the outgoing long wave terrestrial radiation and creates a warming effect. A change in the temperature would affect other climatic elements like humidity, pressure, etc., and have an adverse effect on all the spheres. Hydrosphere. Hydrosphere is the discontinuous layer of the water at or near the Earth's surface and includes all liquid and frozen waters on the surface and underground, in rocks and soil, as well as atmospheric water vapor. The processes operating in the hydrosphere are hydrological processes due to which water is in a constant state of motion and gets transferred from one realm and form to another in the hydrological cycle. Climate is also a major determinant of the hydrological processes. Temperature and precipitation are the two important climatic parameters that directly affect the amount, the seasonality, and the distribution of the water available in different realms of the hydrosphere like surface runoff, overland flow, soil water retention, or infiltration of the rainwater, channel flow, storage, etc. If there is any change in the global climate system, it affects the water on the Earth's surface, and this change in the water balance in different realms. This also affects the human systems like agriculture, fisheries, environmental management, etc. Changes in the climatic parameters affect the salinity, which also affects the hydrosphere. They also have an impact on the fisheries and the coastal and the marine ecosystem. Climate change also affects the deep water circulation in the oceans by altering the thermohaline circulation. The hydrological processes also get affected due to human activities like deforestation, urbanization, industrialization, concentricization, etc., which results into a change of climatic parameters either directly or indirectly. Biosphere. Biosphere is a life supporting layer which surrounds our planet Earth and consists of all the living organisms, the biotic component, the energy component, and the physical environment and the abiotic component. Climatological impacts are felt in biosphere in a number of ways, and it affects the interactions between living organisms themselves and also between living organisms and physical environment. These interactions can be in the form of predator-prey relationships, disease and insect infestations, etc. The atmospheric processes are also responsible for these large-scale input-output mechanisms through biogeochemical cycles. They also have impact on the soil composition, its vertical profile, soil moisture, and its erosion. Cryosphere. You may also be familiar with the term cryosphere. Cryosphere is the frozen part of the Earth's system. It includes ice and snow on the land as well as that found on the water bodies. Snow covered areas on the land include continental ice sheets found in Greenland, Antarctica, as well as other areas of snow and permafrost. The other part of the cryosphere found on the water bodies includes the frozen parts of the oceans near the polar regions and also includes the frozen rivers and lakes. Climate has a lot of effect on the cryosphere. You must have read in our previous chapters that snow has very high albedo or relativity or reflectivity of the incident shortwave solar radiation. This means that it reflects about 90% of the incident light, or it can be said that it has an albedo of 90%. A slightest increase in the temperature conditions would melt some snow, and this would decrease the albedo of the part of the cryosphere, which increases the rate of melting of the snow further. The conditions are just the reverse when there is a decrease in the temperature conditions of the cryosphere. Climate has a lot of impact on our societal systems. Some of them are impacted directly or in primary manner, while others are affected in an indirect manner or secondary manner. Let us first acquaint ourselves with the impact of climate on societal systems like agriculture, transport sector, recreational activities, energy or power requirement, and insurance sector, which are affected directly by the climatic parameters. Agriculture is the most primary occupation of the human beings and marks the beginning of their sedentary life. Prior to agriculture, human beings spent a nomadic life wandering about from one place to another and practiced hunting and food gathering for their sustenance. Climatic elements like temperature, humidity, precipitation, etc. determine the types of crops that are grown in a particular area and also determines their distribution at places having similar climatic conditions. It also determines the farming practices. Today, in the technological era, a lot of advances have been made in the field of agriculture, and it has to be possible to grow crops in quite adverse conditions. However, the impact of climate cannot be ignored. For example, temperature, which acts as one of the major climatic parameters and affects the crops at different successive stages of their development, right from sowing and germination to their maturity. An optimum temperature is required at every stages of development of the crops. Otherwise, the quality and the yield of the crops are affected. For example, in India, a sudden increase in the temperature from the beginning of the March speeds up the ripening of wheat, which also reduces its yield. Similarly, frost and hailstorms are also very dangerous for the crops. Frosts are responsible for damaging certain crops like potatoes, tomatoes, oil seeds, peas, etc. In the same way, fruit orchards in the mountain valleys are also damaged due to frost, which results due to temperature inversion. Hailstorms associated with western disturbances also pose a serious threat to the standing crops of wheat, vegetables, oil seeds and other rabi crops. Moisture is another important climatic parameter that affects the cultivation of the crops. As plants derive their nutrients from the soil, so soil moisture is very important for the plants. The amount of soil moisture varies from being in saturated stage to field capacity stage to wilting stage. Saturated stage refers to the stage when all voids and pores of the soil are filled with water, and such conditions are preferred by crops like paddy and sugarcane, which are water intensive crops. In field capacity stage, about 50% of the total voids are pore spaces and are filled with water, and the rest is occupied by air. Such a soil condition is favorable for millets, maize, wheat, mustard seeds, etc. Lastly, the wilting stage, as the name suggests, refers to the stage when the soil water is lost through continuous evaporation and the crop wilts. So, such type of soil is not conducive for any crops. Apart from soil moisture, atmospheric moisture and precipitation also affects agricultural productivity. There are normally three types of droughts resulting due to rainfall deficiency. First is the permanent drought, which is a characteristic of the arid regions. Second is the seasonal drought, which is associated with two distinct periods of wet and dry seasons. And the third is the occasional drought, which is associated with rainfall variability. Transportation is another societal sector which is impacted by climate. Transportation system forms the backbone of any country, as on it depends the movement of raw materials, finished products, food grains, commodities, people, etc. Machine or fossil fuel based transportation system includes air transport, water transport and land transport. Air transportation makes tremendous use of weather conditions like temperature at various altitudes, snowfall, winds and turbulence, overcast sky and low visibility, heavy rainfall, etc. The field is also known as aviation climatology, which includes average weather at different altitudes and over different locations on the earth. Air transport uses climatic data at all stages like takeoff stage, flying stage and the landing stage. Similarly, we have highway meteorology or highway climatology, which studies the relationship between weather and climate and road transport. Temperature is an important climatic parameter which impacts road transport. Freezing temperatures cause frosting of the road materials, while increasing temperatures, that is greater than 35 degrees Celsius, causes the non-concrete roads to melt. A dip in temperature below minus 20 degrees Celsius also brings about waxing of diesel, which makes the vehicular movement impossible. Cyclonic winds also block the roads by uprooting the trees along the roadsides or bringing other debris and accumulating them on the roads. Sandstorms and dust storms also play havoc to the road traffic as visibility becomes very low. Excessive rainfall also causes flooding of the roads, which brings a lot of inconvenience to the road traffic and sometimes even halts it completely. Elements of weather like temperature, rainfall, and conditions leading to fog, snow, etc. also affect the rail transport. Rail tracks are severely affected due to seasonal variations in the temperature conditions. Freezing temperatures sometimes bring about fractures in the tracks, the conditions being more prevalent in the stages of Punjab, Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir, Rajasthan, etc. In India, fog creates severe visibility problems and delays the trains as they move about very slowly. Heavy rainfall also causes flooding along the railway tracks and also damages them. Weather-induced oceanographic phenomena of tides, waves, etc. affect the oceanic transport or shipping. Weather elements like air temperature, precipitation, and atmospheric disturbances like cyclones, hurricanes, tornadoes, etc. badly affect the weather transport along the oceans and seas. Dense fogs also reduce the visibility and create hassles in the water transport. Temperatures below the freezing point lead to the formation of the icebergs, which create obstacles in the water navigation. Climate affects several forms of recreation and tourism industry. Some of the recreational activities like skiing, as you know, directly depend on sub-freezing temperatures and snowfall. Similarly, sports events, especially outdoor ones, also depend on good weather. So activities like hill trekking, skiing, gliding, surfing, etc. are weather dependent sports. On the other hand, sports like football, cricket, rugby, volleyball, etc. are weather interference sports as are inferred or interrupted by weather activities like rainfall, thunderstorms, dust storms, fog, etc. Now, it must be obvious that climatic factors affecting tourism and recreation are air temperature, sunshine, humidity, cloudiness, wind speed, etc. Based on these, tourisms can be grouped into two categories: climate dependent tourism and attractiveness dependent tourism. Visit to hill stations during summers are examples of climate dependent tourism, while visits to Sahasradhara Falls in Dehradun is an example of attractiveness based tourism. The religious tourism is also dependent on weather and climatic conditions, as quite a number of religious places are situated in high altitudes which are landslide prone. The path that leads to Vaishno Devi shrine, which is landslide prone. Usually rainy seasons are avoided by tourists as landslides are more frequent due to rains. Besides, some religious places situated at high elevations are open only for a limited duration during the summers to avoid extreme freezing temperatures prevailing there. An example of this can be cited as the visit to Char Dham, that is a Kedarnath, Badrinath, Yamunotri and Gangotri, Kailash Mansarovar, etc. yatras. Climate has a direct impact on the amount of energy consumed. You can easily reason this out as extremes of temperature lead to greater consumption of energy. Our body needs an optimum amount of temperature. If the temperature rises to an intolerable extent, then power is needed to run air conditioners to cool the room to an optimum level so that it becomes comfortable. Reverse is the condition if a place experiences freezing temperatures. In that case, extra power is required to operate blowers and air conditioners that produce a warming effect in the room. Power companies often take suggestions from climatologists so as to get an estimate of the power needed for a particular season based on climatic forecasts. Climatologists also give suggestions regarding feasibility of the exploring the use of non-conventional sources of energy for a particular place, which could in fact reduce the burden on the fossil fuels and also save environment by providing green energy. The insurance and risk management sector is also directly influenced by weather and climate. Disasters do happen when people settle in areas vulnerable to the hazards. You know that these days a lot of developmental activities have come up in the hazard-prone areas. This has led to greater inhabitation or settlement of those areas compared to the past. Sometimes even the carrying capacity of those regions have exceeded, and any hazard would result in severe loss of life and property. A very good example of this can be seen in the figure which shows that Kedarnath area in 1882 in comparison to the Kedarnath area in 2011. You must have noticed that so many settlements have come up in these years around the temple area, which is landslide prone, especially during the rainy season. This was one of the main reasons why so many people lost their lives in the heavy rains of June 2013, when the area experienced multiple landslides and also breach of Chorabari Lake, which washed away the entire settled area around the Kedarnath temple. So again, consultancy of the atmospheric scientists are taken by insurance and risk management companies as well as the national disaster management agencies of the government in the form of pre-warning given by them. This helps in prior evacuation of the areas and save lives, and to some extent curtail the loss of property too. So far, you have studied about the societal impacts systems which are affected primarily by the weather and climatic elements. Now let us get acquainted with the indirect or the secondary impact of the climate on the societal systems in brief. Climatic parameters have direct influence on agriculture, which in turn affects the food prices. If the crop fails, the shortage leads to soar in the prices of the effective crops. Similar situation is also reached during the extreme weather events, which make even bare sustenance almost impossible for those affected. This also affects the economic as well as political conditions of the place. Sometimes failure of the government to handle price rise of the essential commodities leads to a kind of unrest among the affected people. In India and a few other places in the world have witnessed the downfall or even change in the government due to these factors. We've already discussed that human body can survive in certain suites of climatic conditions. We require an optimum amount of light, sunshine, temperature, humidity, precipitation, and above all, a requisite amount of oxygen. If any of these parameters are above or below an optimum level, there is an adverse effect on the human health. We all know that at high altitudes, that is in the mountainous regions, there is a lack of oxygen due to low air pressure in those regions. You might have noticed that while traveling towards higher altitudes, you often get nausea feeling or experience bleeding from the nose. This is also called mountain sickness. At extremely high altitudes, breathing might even be impossible without the aid of oxygen cylinders. You might have seen that mountaineers going for higher expeditions like Mount Everest are often armed with oxygen cylinders and wear proper insulated dresses so as to combat the extremely cold winds. Normal body temperature of the human beings is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Body metabolism helps to maintain a balance between incoming and outgoing heat. When the surrounding air temperature is above the human body temperature, body gains heat and vice versa. The skin acts as a primary source of heat exchange from body to the environment and vice versa. This gives rise to two extreme conditions, namely hypothermia and hyperthermia. Hypothermia is a condition that happens in extremely cold environmental conditions when the body temperature falls much below the normal level and causes severe frost bites, and in acute cases leads to death of the human beings due to freezing of the tissues and destruction of the cells. On the other hand, hyperthermia is a condition which happens in extremely hot environment and the human body temperature rises and the blood vessels dilate. A lot of sweating occurs as moisture escapes from the skin in an attempt to reduce the body temperature by evaporation. Both the conditions of hypothermia and hypothermia bring a lot of discomfort to the human body and is also fatal in some cases. It is obvious that the comfort zone of the human beings exists when normal body temperature is maintained. Based on this, a few comfort indices have been derived known as the physioclimatic indices. These include the heat index stress, standard effective temperature, apparent temperature, comfort clothing, etc. Nowadays, the effect of weather and climate on the human health is studied under an upcoming branch of climatology, which is called the medical climatology. Certain diseases are related to climate. For example, global warming and humidity may increase the causes of vector-borne diseases like malaria, dengue, etc. to areas beyond their normal locations. So, we can conclude that climate has a role to play on the human health and comfort. Applied climatology is the study of the effects of climate on natural and social systems. Sources of climate data is broadly divided into two types, that is a primary and a secondary sources. We have studied the effect on climate on natural systems, which consist of the 5 spheres. There is a continuous interaction between these spheres, and climate plays a major role in affecting different processes that occur within these systems. Processes in the atmosphere inherently affect other spheres. Climate also has a huge impact on our societal systems like agriculture, transportation, tourism, energy requirement, insurance sector, etc. Climate also has a lot of bearing on the human health, as human body can survive well only in certain suits of the climate.